I'll call the meeting to order, and Laura, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Sill,
Here.
Commissioner Wilson,
Here.
Commissioner Chung,
Here.
Vice Chair Koch,
Here.
Chair Ross.
Here. Thank you. Well, welcome everybody to the ASCC meeting, Portola Valley ASCC meeting of Monday, March 14th, 2022. Boy, we're almost in spring. Pretty amazing. Before we get started on the regular agenda, I'll open oral communications and invite anybody who's with us today who wishes to make comments about any subject that is not on our agenda today to do so. And just a reminder, we're here to listen, but we're not able to discuss any items that get raised during oral communications.
I only see 0 attendees.
Okay, it's just us so far, huh?
Yeah, it's just us. So there's no members of the public as attendees. So there's no oral communications.
All right, then I'll close oral communications and move on to new business. We have one item today, and that is an architectural review of an application for a new spa deck pathway and minor alterations to the main residence in the Blue Oaks planned unit development. And I believe we have Mr. Tor, the property owner, with us today. Jake Garcia has prepared a staff report. And Jake, I assume you're going to be making a presentation.
Yes, thank you.
Go right ahead.
Great. Great. Thank you so much. The item before you tonight is a request for consideration of approval for an architectural review for a new spa, deck, pathway, and minor alterations to the main residence in the Blue Oaks planned unit development at 2 Buck Meadow Drive. Starting first, I would like to call out some corrections to the staff report. The provided project data table on page 3 of the staff report, which is page 6 of the agenda packet for tonight's meeting, should indicate that the existing lot coverage is 3,695 square feet, not 4,010 square feet. And the remaining lot coverage is therefore 1,690 square feet, not 5,990 square feet. The existing impervious surface in that same table is 4,136 square feet, not 4,010 square feet. And the proposed impervious surface is 4,886 square feet, not 4,010 square feet. This corrected data table will also be shown later in the presentation for your reference. And I apologize for those clerical errors there. Jumping now into the project presentation. This 134,598 square foot lot is zoned residential estate located along Buck Meadow Drive and is within the Blue Oaks HOA. The property is surrounded by other residential properties in the same zoning district, and property dedicated as an open space easement abuts the rear property line of the project site. The property is slightly sloped throughout, and the building envelope for the project site is located at the rear of the property due to an existing pathway easement, storm drain easement, private open space easement, slope easement, and a known fault trace located at the front of the property closest to Buck Meadow Drive. As I mentioned a moment ago, the subject property is located within the Blue Oaks HOA, and in addition to the town's municipal code and design guidelines, the site is also subject to the requirements of the Blue Oaks Planned Unit Development Statement, also known as a PUD. The Blue Oaks PUD indicates the projects which propose fences, entry features, and other features as otherwise permitted by the Blue Oaks PUD may extend into the building envelope. However, when those site features are proposed outside of the building envelope, they are subject to ASCC for review and approval. Here are the existing and proposed conditions. The project data table with the correct values, floor or square footage values is shown on your screen. Property is developed with an existing 2-story residence and a guest cottage. The existing site improvements include a drive court with guest parking, site paths, landscape plantings, and a 6-foot wire fence at the rear of the property. The guest parking portions of the site, the guest parking portions of the site pass and the 6-foot wire fence were previously approved by the ASCC in 2010 to be allowed to encroach outside of the building envelope. And the building envelope is shown here in orange for your reference. And those previously approved encroachments are shown in green. And the applicant is proposing new landscaping in the rear of the yard of the main residence and minor modifications to the main residence. Landscape improvements would include a new curved path coming from the kitchen patio area of the main residence to a newly proposed above ground spa and deck. Where the path is most curved, it extends outside of the building envelope and is approximately 33 feet, 3 inches from the rear property line, shared with the open space. The area of proposed work outside the main building envelope is shown in red. And as I mentioned earlier, the proposed work that is outside of the building envelope is subject to ASCC review and approval. In addition, the area outside of the building envelope for 2 Buck Meadow is considered a public open space easement and does allow for the use of trails and paths. In addition to the landscape improvements, the applicant is proposing minor modifications to the window and door fenestration of the main residence, resulting in a 4 square foot increase of the main building, and changes will be detailed later in this presentation. There are no trees proposed for removal. Starting first with the proposed site work. On your screen is a diagram showing proposed site work with the main focus on the path. Where the path is most curved, it extends outside the building envelope and is approximately 33 feet, 3 inches from that rear property line that is shared with open space. And the path is proposed to be decomposed granite with 5 sets of concrete steps along the way. The applicant proposes some new patio furniture and lighting along the path. The proposed deck is to be constructed adjacent to the above ground spa, and the deck is 2.5 feet above grade and would be screened with a 30-inch wood screen to minimize impacts in privacy for neighbors. The spa and wood deck are located within the building envelope and are 42 feet 10 inches from the property line shared with the closest neighbor at 4 Buck Meadow. Where the path connects to the main residence, a small tiered planter with a shade structure is proposed. The building envelope and existing wired fence, 6-foot wired fence enclosing the proposed work is called out for your reference. Jumping to the proposed alterations on the main residence, here are the proposed kitchen elevations where the applicant proposes the removal of an existing kitchen door that faces the side yard and adding a new kitchen door that faces the rear yard. Installation of the new door would result in an increase of area of the main residence by 4 square feet. The project also proposes a new kitchen window where the old kitchen door used to be. Next is the exterior office sliding glass door, which is proposed to be replaced by a smaller swinging glass door. This elevation faces the property line, which is shared with the closest neighbor. An existing window in the sleeping loft is proposed to be replaced by a larger window. This window is on the 2nd story, relatively interior to the house floor plan, and faces the front of the property. And at the master bedroom, a window is proposed to be replaced by a window that is being relocated from the kitchen. Here are the elevations and details of the proposed spa area. You'll see that that screening that is being proposed for privacy from the neighbor. And then the proposed colors and materials are to match the existing colors and materials shown here on your screen. Please note the existing stucco paint color included as Western wear is not consistent with the design guideline reflectivity values. However, all the other existing colors and materials are compliant with the Portola Valley Municipal Code development standards and the town's design guidelines. Here's the proposed lighting diagram. Exterior lighting proposed on the house includes 1 new downlit sconce to match the existing sconces on the main residence. The project proposes 7 new lights along the path, 3 step lights in the spa deck stair area, and 1 light in the spa. All of the proposed lighting is dark sky compliant and is consistent with the town's outdoor lighting ordinance. Existing lighting near the proposed lighting has also been provided for reference and includes the LED wall sconces shown by purple dots on the screen, and the recessed lighting at the kitchen patio shown by the green, dark green dots on your screen. Staff sent a notice to all property owners within 300 feet of the project in advance of the ASCC meeting. The applicant has also conducted their own public outreach to adjacent neighbors and has provided positive neighbor feedback from 3 neighbors. No additional public comments have been received by staff since the publication of the report. And that ends the staff presentation. Both the town staff and applicant team are available for any questions by the ASCC. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Mr. Garcia?
No,
None from Jane? Al?
no questions.
Megan?
The only question I would have is, since this is like an above ground spa, is there any other heating elements like a heater, pumps, whatnot that are outside of the unit itself that needs soundproofing?
There's some equipment that's being screened underneath the deck, but I would yield to the applicant to provide any sound details.
Okay.
Great. We'll see when we get there. Kenny, do you have any questions?
One is just to confirm that what's being proposed is compliant with the easements that have been described. And the other is if there is a justification being given for the paint color not being compliant with the reflectivity requirements.
The proposed work outside of the building envelope and in the public open space easement is consistent with what's allowed, but it's subject to ASCC review for final approval. So any I guess feedback or comments that you may have may affect the project work being proposed. And then as far as the proposed paint colors, I believe that that was what was approved by the ASCC in 2010. I didn't see any discussion in the project files that led to that approval that would, I guess, be of assistance to your consideration to today's decision. But it was previously approved in the past and is to be matched with what's being proposed today.
That's helpful. And so we're to interpret the open space easement, I guess, particularly because there's a fence further out even than that as a sort of visual open space easement.
I think your question is about the fence at the rear of the yard that's also located outside of the building envelope. And for clarification, it's a 6-foot fence that's a wired fence that was previously approved with the full site development. And the proposed scope of work for today's project would be within that fence area.
Okay, thank you.
And just to build on that, most of the easements that we come across in our project reviews are easements that you cannot build in. But there's different types of easements, and this one in particular, the public open space easement at Blue Oaks, you can build in under certain circumstances with the ASCC approval. So just if that helps clarify anything.
It does. Thank you. Is there any other advice you can provide as far as what the purpose of the easement is, if you can build in it?
I would say that generally the intent of the Blue Oaks PUD was to provide, a lot of space between the lots, to provide that open space, to maintain the character of the open spaces between the houses. So there was energy that went into that when it was created. And so the thought was that there should be this extra layer of review to make sure that the encroachments weren't too much and that aesthetic and that ethos was being continued with the individual projects as they were implemented into the future.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, hi, I'm Tom Karuba. I'm the project architect, and I just wanted to add as a point of, or a couple points of clarification. One is that it's actually a private open space easement, not a public open space easement, just to clarify that. And then I was also going to add that I was the architect for the original development of the property and the house back in 2010. And my understanding is at the time when we selected all the paint colors, they were in full compliance with both the town and the Blue Oaks PUD in terms of light reflectivity. So the fact that that one color is currently not compliant, it makes me think that perhaps that code has changed and the light reflectivity value minimums and have changed or maximums have changed since 2010, but I honestly don't know that for sure. But I know at the time it was fully compliant.
Thank you for that, Tom. Commissioners, do you have any more questions for staff before we go to the applicant presentation? Nope, looks like they've all been answered. Great. Well, excuse me. So at this moment, I'll invite the applicants to add some comments if they like. If you need to share your screen to do anything, I'm sure Jake can hand off to you.
Yeah, we didn't really have a formal presentation prepared today. We feel the project is pretty simple and straightforward, and we're here for any questions or clarifications as needed at this time.
Right.
Actually, one other thing that I was just thinking of that needs to be clarified. In Jake's presentation and also in his staff report, he referred to the privacy panels around the spa deck as being wood, and in fact, they are a bronze colored perforated metal. And it does note that in the drawings, but I think he might have mistakenly referred to them as wood, as a wood screen.
I thought I read that they were core 10. Is that not right?
They're not exactly core 10. They're like a pre-finished bronze colored metal.
Oh, okay.
There is some core 10 steel curved retaining walls at the terrace planting area that's outside the kitchen door.
But these are just a metal that's painted, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
And then could you, I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead. Never mind. Sorry,
No,
Dave.
no, Megan, you're on. We're asking questions of the applicant.
Sorry, Randy.
Please continue.
And then do you have any more information about anything that could be a noise producing, for the heater and pumps, any sound mitigation for that could be?
Yeah, so as Jake said, all the equipment for the spa is located directly beneath the spa, and it's in a it's all enclosed and with wood siding and solid wood doors. So it shouldn't be there isn't any remote equipment that's located elsewhere on the property.
Great.
Great. Thank you, Megan. Any other commissioners with questions? Kenny, anything from you?
Just out of curiosity, the bronze paint color for that, was that meant to match something else that was on the property? Is like
do you want to address that, Sean?
Yeah, I could probably answer that most easily. I mean, the intent on that was simply to try to match as close as we could the core 10 color with the colors that are available from the company that makes the perforated metal screen. That's all it is.
Okay, thank you. And that's within your building envelope. That's not outside the, that's not in the easement. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Al, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Jane, how about you? Nope, I'll take that as a no. I don't have any questions either. Thank you very much for all the helpful information. Thank you, Jake, for a good presentation. I'll open the public comment portion of the agenda for this item. Laura, is there anybody attending who would like to speak?
We just have one attendee other than the council member Derwin. So if you would like to speak, please go ahead and raise your hand now. And there are no hands up.
All right, great. I'll close public comments and return to the commission for discussion. Who would like to start us off? Volunteers?
I will.
All right, great. Thank you, Megan.
I think this will be a very enjoyable space for the homeowner. One thing that we didn't quite touch on was controlling of the lighting, which Dave, you and I are usually on, just to make sure that this lighting control maybe has some type of a timer so that path lighting is not left on. As you know, it's such a beautiful dark sky environment up there at Blue Oaks, but I really think this is a lovely use of the space and enjoyment for the homeowner that doesn't really impose on anyone else, and it's quite nice.
Great. Thank you, Megan. Jane, what do you think?
I agree with Megan. I think it's a sensible way of using the space outside. I approve of the tweaks to the windows and the building, the main building. And I think the plan makes it so that the applicant can better use and enjoy their property. So I think it's a good plan.
Thank you. Al?
I agree that this makes a lot of sense. It's consistent with the code and the design guidelines. I think the lighting's appropriate. The changes to the main house make sense. I have no issue with any of the work being done outside in the private open space. To me, this is just a very good project. Kudos to the project team. It's very clear and well structured.
Thank you all. Kenny, comments?
I agree with everything that's been said. I think it looks very reasonable. I think the applicant, as the description of the metal panel, leads me to believe that they're self-motivated to make it look as good as possible. I've personally been disappointed by paint attempts to replicate Corten steel, but I think the applicants will do the best they can. I think it's, from my perspective, I agree that this is approvable.
Thanks, Kenny. Well, I also think this is a very good application. I echo Megan's comments about controlling the lighting. As we're all aware, things are simply controlled by an on-off switch. Sometimes it's difficult to know if you've left the lights on, if you can't actually see them from wherever you are inside the house. So I would just like to suggest a condition, or actually I'll just throw a question out there for the applicant. Have you already taken that into account? And is there some form of lighting control planned here in this for these path lights and the exterior lights, other than just simple on-off switch?
Yes, we actually have a fairly high-end lighting control system on our house now. And the way we would set up these path lights and other exterior lights would be essentially, I think, similar to what we have we have path lights going around the other sides of the house, and they are on a system which automatically turns them off if they're left on after a certain time. So we typically would manually turn them off from the controls, but if we omitted it and they get left on, they automatically go off along with all the other lights at sometime in the late evening. So they can't be left on all night. They are not currently set up so that they're on a 1 hour timer or 2 hour timer or anything of that sort. Though that is viable to do with our lighting system, so we could do that if we had to. But I think I've avoided doing that because it becomes a problem if you're out there and the lights go off.
Right.
I'd rather not happen that way. But otherwise, we can do whatever is necessary, and we've always taken that upon ourselves. That was not a requirement in our earlier ASCC approvals, but the fact is, I don't want those lights on any more than you do. So,
Right. Well, it sounds like you have a good system set up, and
yes.
I'm satisfied with that. No additional condition required from my point of view. I'm generally familiar with the architectural panels that are being proposed for the screening, and the factory finish that's applied to those is usually very durable and very attractive. So I trust that you've chosen one that works well with your other finishes. I don't have any difficulty making the required findings for this project. I won't enumerate them, but they're earlier in the staff report, pages 6 and 7. And I think all of them are easily met here. And I congratulate you all, applicant and architect, on a very well put together project and presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think it's time for a motion. And I'll be happy to entertain one.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve the project with the conditions outlined in the staff report.
Thank you, Al.
Second for me, please.
Second for Megan. Very good. Let's take a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None opposed. So that passes 5-0. Congratulations. Good luck. And
Thank you very much.
you're welcome. Okay. That concludes item 1. You're all welcome to stick around, by the way, if you like, but it'll be boring.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Not required.
Thanks.
You're welcome. All right. Let's see, coming back to the agenda, I see we're at item 2, which is commission reports. And I know there's been some activity over the last month or so. Who has worked on anything since our last meeting? Jane, do you have anything?
No, not at the moment.
Okay. Al, how about you?
I have one on Wednesday.
Megan.
I have one coming up on Wednesday, so I'll tell you about it next time, but it's also on Buck Meadow. And it's the vegetation restoration project. So really looking forward to that.
Okay. Al, do you have anything?
The only thing I have is I could give an update on the housing element work. See, we've met twice since the last ASCC meeting, both on February 22nd and February 28th. They were both fairly lengthy meetings. And in both cases, the main agenda item was site selection for higher density housing locations in town. I'd say that the main takeaway was there was some level of discomfort from both the public and the committee members on forced upzoning of single family properties. And that was potentially going to be one of the avenues for getting to our arena numbers. This complicates finding a way to meet our arena numbers, and it's forced us to take a little bit of a step back to reconsider other options. And the reality is it's just a very difficult problem. It's, you could argue it's over constrained, but I think the planning team is doing a really great job trying to come up with solutions, but it's a tough problem, and there's a lot of competing concerns from residents and committee members. I think that progress is continuing to be made, but it is a difficult, contentious problem. So we're moving forward.
Right. Well, thank you for that update. It's certainly getting a lot of discussion around town, and you laugh.
Yeah.
But from a perspective of somebody who doesn't have to attend all the meetings, it's really exciting to see the level of public engagement that's taking place on this. Yeah, it's as you say, it can get uncomfortable. Some of the issues are uncomfortable. There's nothing easy about this, and the sort of collision of RENA, ABAG's RENA requirements and new state ordinances like SB 9 make for a very complicated set of conditions. Not to mention our, the town's long history of wanting to be very much in control of the environment. So I really applaud the whole committee, and think it's great that you've been hanging in there and participating in this. It's good to get a report. Let's see, Kenny, do you have any activities to report for the last month?
I do not.
All right, I have a minor item or two. There's a minor addition taking place in the ranch at 2 Ohlone Street. It's a 284 square foot addition. There's no new exterior lighting or landscaping. It could have come to ASCC review, but it didn't appear to me to have any controversial issues. It falls below the normal 400 square foot threshold for our review. The application seems to be very consistent with the construction that's there. So I agreed with staff that it was an item that did not need to come to us on a regular agenda. Let's see if there's anything else that I had looked at. At 40 Buckeye, there's some proposed decking. It's actually a replacement of a flammable deck with a non-flammable deck and a glass canopy. Again, not required to come to ASCC, but staff asked if maybe it should. I thought that it was a very straightforward proposal and really didn't need ASCC review. And I applaud people's efforts to convert flammable structures to non-flammable structures. It's, I think, something we ought to really be encouraging. It's great to see. I think those are the only two things that I took any action on over the last month.
Hey Dave, can you tell us more about that? What material did they choose, and did it seem like it's a good, an easy almost replacement?
No, it's not an easy replacement, sadly. In fact, I think the estimate for the total costs is upwards of $250,000.
Oh, geez.
So it is, that includes some additional improvements, a glass canopy, sort of a trellis feature. But the entire deck structure is being replaced with a steel structure. So that by itself is going to be pretty expensive. The decking material, I would say, is not completely inflammable, but it has a much higher flame spread rating than wood decking. I can't recall the actual product. Staff might remember, Laura might know, but definitely an improvement over what is present. And I believe it also meets the fire hardening code that was just implemented. So overall, a great application, albeit, you know, not something everybody's in a position to do. It's not an easy one.
No. Yeah, it seems that a lot of the non-flammable materials require much more engineering and structure, weight capacity and whatnot. So taking a wooden deck and adding a tile can be, a big process. So.
Yep, there's a lot of ways to improve the fire hardening of an existing deck, but replacing it with a steel structure is a little bit more profound and expensive in design and construction, I think. So, all right, before I close this item, I'll open public comment. And if anybody attending would like to address us on our commission reports, now's the time. A little shake of the head,
No
Laura.
hands up.
No hands up. All right, I'll close item 2 and move on to item 3, staff report. And it looks like there's at least one item in particular you wanted to talk to us about, Laura, and that's a return to in-person meetings.
Yes, so 2 aspects of our staff report for you. So the first one is related to staffing, and I'll do that one first, if that's okay.
Please.
Just wanted the ASCC to be aware that we went before the council last week, I think it was, to talk about the overall staffing in the planning and building department, the amount of workload, the budget, how things are going. So the volume of work in the planning and building department remains very high. Our building permit workload is still really high, much higher than before the pandemic. And just to kind of get a sense of the order of magnitude, we were very conservative in our budgeting last year because there were so many unknowns, in the world at the time we were doing the budget. But even with that, we've been very busy. We took in a year's worth of revenue in 6 months.
Wow.
So very high revenues, very high complexity of projects, a lot of time invested in those projects. So if you're interested in the details, there's a detailed staff report as part of the packet that includes the budget numbers and the project numbers. As ASCC members, you're probably thinking, well, then where have these projects been? Because we've been canceling meetings. And projects bunch up, and it's just the nature of our work. So we were taking more active steps to try to spread them out early in the pandemic so that we could manage them, kind of control the fire hose that was coming at us. And so now we've kind of taken away some of those controls and things are going back a little bit to the normal ebb and flow. We have caught up with a lot of the things that we were trying to on the planning side. We also got the commitment from the council for additional resources for consultant planners for the remainder of this year so that we can continue to improve on our timeliness and customer service and kind of get closer back to pre-pandemic times. So funding is continuing for Jake and for Ralph, who's the other planner that you've met here. And then I also wanted to let you know that because of the very important process that we're undertaking with the housing element and the safety element, we thought it was warranted to backfill some of my time so that I can really be focused on those really important initiatives. So the council is supporting bringing in like an acting principal planner, like a division manager for 6 months while we have our senior planner is out on scheduled leave. So we're just kind of moving people around in the different positions to make sure that we can get everything covered. So it's very likely that you will start to see that acting principal planner at ASCC. So I'll give you more information as that's coming. So I'll continue to be involved in setting all the big picture for the projects, but that principal planner will be overseeing the staff reports and attending the meetings. So I'll let you know as the details become available, but we can expect that in the next couple of months. So in terms of long-term resources, the council has also given their support for the idea of hiring another development review technician. So this is another person to work with Carol and Cheyenne on our team to help process this very high level of workload that we have. So the council has said we can go ahead and do a recruitment for that with a new person starting at the beginning of the fiscal year, which is July for us. So we also let the council know that we could certainly need additional resources depending on how things go, because things are just very busy. We want to make sure that we keep up that level of customer service that we're always aiming for. And then in terms of the big picture, Al was talking about the housing element update. We are going to be going to council next week on the 23rd. Let me check the date, I'm sorry. Yeah, on the 23rd to talk more about the housing element and the resources and the options for the council to consider as we're doing this kind of adjustment that Al was saying, to look, explore more things, do more analysis, and think more about the state's inventory. So if you're interested, that'll be another place you can look at the staff report. And I know as ASCC members, you get questions and comments from your friends and neighbors. So you can refer them to those things. And then if they have questions, we have the housing@portolavalley.net email address. So that's a good way to reach the team for those things. So I just kind of wanted to get that out of the way because that's just kind of an update for me on staffing, because I think the next part you probably want to discuss a little bit, and that's related to going back to in-person meetings. So you might recall that the town is in contract with a company that's installing physical equipment into the historic schoolhouse, so that we'll be able to have hybrid meetings that will be both in person and on Zoom. So we can keep the best aspects of both of those things. So they're physically installing the equipment now. So that's going to take a few weeks. And then there's going to be some training and some transition. So we think that in April, we'll be talking about the next steps in terms of going back to in-person meetings. So we think there'll probably be a couple of things that we need to work through the details on. So staff's recommendation would be for staff to just work with the chair and the vice chair as we kind of sort through a couple of those details on how those hybrid meetings are going to work. We also expect, the council to kind of give some feedback on how all of this is going to come together and help us to set the tone for how they're going to conduct their own meetings. You don't have to do it the same way as council, but it's nice to have an example from them of what they might like to see. So we'll have to do some coordination on that. As you know, the historic meeting times for this body were at 7 p.m. in the schoolhouse. And then we had site meetings in the afternoon. So that was the old approach that we had. One of my objectives of moving the meetings earlier was to see if we could reduce the number of night meetings that the town has, and to see if it would be effective, to see if we would receive concerns from our residents or our community about not being able to participate at an earlier time. And my observation is that we have not received complaints or concerns. I'm not aware of any of our applicants that have said that that time wasn't possible for them in the 2 years that, or I guess a year and a half since we've been back to meetings from doing this. Now, certainly there are trade-offs and we understand that. So one of my goals is to reduce the number of night meetings that staff has, because we have a very high number of staff commitments in the evenings, even compared to similar cities. So I'm always aware of that and thinking about that. So we want to balance that in our discussion about going back to meeting times. When we talked about this last time, Commissioner Chung also had some interest in changing the time. So this agenda item is structured in such a way that you can bring up any questions and comments that you have. And in terms of procedure, if we're going to make a permanent, because we've all been in special meetings this whole time because of the pandemic. If we want to make any permanent change to the meeting time, that is something that I'll need to just check with the process, and we may need to do a quick council approval of any permanent change to the meeting time. So I can help think through, logistically, what do we need to do after the discussion. And then in regards to site meetings, my proposal would be that we just kind of take what we've learned over the last 2 years, go back to doing site meetings for those projects where we feel like it's appropriate and warranted. And then, not do site meetings in the cases where we feel like there's not going to be as much value that comes out of it. As you might recall, there are some kind of logistical, legal challenges that go along with doing site meetings. And so we'll have to continue to work with the town attorney and see how some of those go. But I just wanted to flag that for members of the ASCC, that there are some, issues that we haven't had to deal with historically that could come up around site meetings. So we staff recognize that it's a very valuable part of the process, because truly every site is different in this community, which is just not the case every place else. But we would need to kind of work with the chair and the vice chair as we sort out some of those details in order to move forward. So that's the staff report that I have for you. Happy to take any questions. And then I would encourage you, if you would like to have any discussion about going back to in-person meetings, the time, any of the logistics that you'd like to give feedback on.
Okay. Thank you, Laura. Commissioners, I'll bet people do have questions and discussion that they want to provide. And I see Kenny's wants to jump right in. Please go ahead.
Before there's some discussion that I think is anticipated from me, but I do have a question on what Laura just mentioned, and that's are the site visits problematic from a legal standpoint as distinct from site meetings?
Yes. And so if we have scheduled site visits where ASCC members can go out to the site, then we don't think that is problematic, and you would have to go in small groups that don't constitute a meeting under the Brown Act. If it's an actual site meeting where it's on the agenda in a Brown Act meeting, there has been some concern expressed about that because it is not accessible, and particularly accessible to people with disabilities. And so there's some question around that. And then there's, always some question around liability, as we all know if we've gone tromping around in the hills on some of these site visits. So those are the two questions that remain in my mind, things that we'll have to grapple with at some point.
Okay, thank you.
Laura, I just want to follow up Kenny's question a little bit and see if I can understand a little bit the maybe the evolution of these concerns. In the time I've been on the ASCC, I can remember maybe one or two times pre-pandemic where there was any concern at all about either the liability issues or the accessibility issues. It usually took the form of watch your head, there's a wire right there. So I'm curious, has there been some precipitating event either within the community or outside the community that has raised the profile of these issues for field meetings, or is this more of a theoretical concern that has sort of bubbled up as people have had a chance to think about it more?
It's a little bit of the first one. It has been in response to some of the larger projects or more controversial projects that the town has been reviewing in recent time. And then it's also the second one that you mentioned. It's kind of a chance that people have had to contemplate or reflect on these meetings since we stopped holding them, generally speaking, during the pandemic, and people had a chance to think about it, and we were talking about it internally. So I think it is at least partially a reflection of changing times and kind of more legal requirements and more structure around to many of the things that we do.
Okay. And it seems to me that the accessibility requirements have been around for at least 20 years. And I don't recall anybody lodging a concern or complaint about not being able to attend a meeting. And now I understand that that's not the standard. If you see 100 open handicap parking stalls, nobody in them, that doesn't mean you get to use them. It's not a question of demand, but I was just curious because it doesn't seem like this was on anybody's radar a couple of years ago. And I'm also wondering if there might be some way to work out a, kind of a virtual access
Yeah.
in the same way that we have, hybrid meetings coming up. Would there be some way to provide somebody visual and audio access remotely, say who was confined to their home or had some other limitation or disability that made them not able to attend a field meeting? So I'm
Yeah.
hoping that that's kind of on the table as a possibility.
Yeah, I've been thinking about something like that because our normal procedure is people should notify us if they would like any accommodation for the meeting.
Right.
So what I'm thinking is if we can find a way to kind of harness what will be hybrid technology, right? And if there's a way to use that also for a site meeting so that people, you know what I mean, maybe with a handheld device by notifying us in advance would be able to participate in the meeting in a meaningful way, that might solve the problem. So I don't think that we have to solve all of these things to go back to our site meetings, but I think we need to be mindful and we need to start making improvements over time so that we bring ourselves more into compliance.
Okay. Well, I didn't mean to jump in and preempt anybody else. So let's go back to other commissioners who want to chime in on this.
Sure, I'll
Okay.
jump in.
All right.
I looking forward to hybrid meetings. I think that's a great step forward. On the site visits, I am certainly looking forward to getting back to them. I miss them quite a bit. The compromise of going in small groups, that's better than not having them, but I'm not wild about that because we don't tend to get much of a discussion or presentation from the project team. And when we go as a big group, then we do. So, I'd certainly hope that we can eventually get back to where we were before. That I found that to be a very, very productive format for the projects that merited it. But I understand that there's some complexity associated with that too. But yeah, that's my thoughts.
Thanks. Jane, what do you think? You might be muted.
Yeah, I think the site visits were valuable and it would be nice to get out into the fresh air again sometimes on these Zoom calls. But I wonder if when we've got the meetings set up as the hybrid, if the commissioners will be able to attend remotely if they are away and can, as in abroad or something. Whether that would still be a possibility, because at times the Zoom being on Zoom, the meetings being on Zoom has been very convenient, not having to physically drive down to the schoolhouse, etc. But that's just my personal subjective thoughts on that one. But no, and the meeting time does suit me better as well. I don't know about everyone else with the 4 o'clock. So I wouldn't be averse to sticking with the 4 o'clock.
Right, thanks. The answer to your first question might be a legal one, and maybe Laura has a response. I know that right now we're operating under emergency regulations that permit us to attend remotely. It might be that after the emergency is over, that ability goes away. But Laura, do you have any insight on that, or has Cara done any analysis of that?
I don't have the answer to that yet. We will, of course, have to look into that. So we'll give you an update when we have it available.
Right. On the one hand, it's been nice to be able to participate for me personally while I'm away. But on the other hand, it makes vacations a little bit less arm's length than they otherwise could be. uh, but in any case, Al, did you have any thoughts about the meeting time?
My schedule is pretty flexible, and so I'm happy to go with whatever suits everyone else.
Mhm.
I do hope that when we go back to hybrid meetings, that commissioners can participate remotely, because I do take advantage of that. But I understand that'll probably be guidelines from the state. But as far as time, whatever suits everybody else. I understand the demands on the planning staff, so it's good to keep it early. But I understand that Kenny's got issues too. So whatever, I can adjust to anything in terms of time.
Great. Megan,
Yeah.
what do you think about all this?
I think that the site meetings are so important, and I think a group site meeting is even much more important. When all of us are together and we are able to ask the questions and give our input on site as a group, as a whole of ASCC, it's much more productive. And I think there should be a way that we can provide some kind of video interaction with somebody remotely. We don't have the best cell service here, so that might hinder that. But at least we should look into that. When you go separately on a visit, you do get your own kind of experience. You don't have all the neighbors, you don't have a full presentation. And this one thing that we do great is look at individual sites in Portola Valley, because every site is individual, and how you have the back and forth, and it's a real communication between the architect, the landscape architect, the homeowner, the neighbors, and our commission. So, and planning as well. So it is so valuable. But so I'm really excited we're going to get back there, and hopefully we can find some way to make it more accessible. As far as timing goes, I still have some non-drivers in the house. So 3 o'clock is kind of the pickup time. So 4 o'clock is great for these meetings, right? Site meetings, I assume, would be between the 1 to 3 p.m. So we just need to talk it through and see how feasible that is. Yeah, but I'm excited to see you all in person more often.
Great. Well, Kenny,
So,
go ahead.
I have non-drivers in the house as well.
Yes, who need transportation.
And because specifically of them, the sort of 5:45 to 6:30 time slot is one that we need to get out of, with my wife getting back to work in the office, and myself being already back to work in the office. It's really difficult if the meeting overlaps 5:45 to 6:30. We anticipated that by the time we would be back to work in the office, the meeting time would return to normal, the 7 p.m. slot. I'm flexible. I can make stuff work with my hours shifting around the day, as long as it doesn't overlap 5:45 to 6:30. So if it's during the day, for me, it needs to end by 5:45. I think you're muted, Dave.
Thank you. Any other thoughts about field meetings? You've participated in one field meeting, I think.
I've done independent.
Yes, of course, independent visits. But yeah, your joining the ASCC coincided almost perfectly with the pandemic. So you haven't had that sort of experience that the rest of us did, and got, I would say, for myself, those field meetings were as valuable, if not more valuable, than the evening commission meetings. But do you have any thoughts about that? Have you've been able to visit sites as an individual, and you've been to one joint or larger noticed field meeting? Do you have any feelings about preference one over the other?
Yeah, I guess I can't really speak over the experience of the rest of the commissioners, of course, with regard to the value of the full meeting versus a visit combined with a meeting. I did appreciate the one-on-one time with the homeowners that I got during site visits, personal site visits, scheduled on the basis of just their schedule and my schedule. I thought that was really helpful and allowed me to come to the full meeting better informed, and perhaps with questions answered a little bit better than would be possible in a group setting. It's not to question the other values that a group meeting could have, but I of course I went into this aware of the pre-existing structure, and with a certain comfort level with the time commitment there, and so I think I can figure out a way to make it work, as long as the time doesn't overlap when I need to be moving little monsters around.
Okay. Oh, thank you.
Through the chair, can I make a
Yes,
suggestion?
please.
Could we see if there's any public comments on this discussion before because then maybe we can kind of reach some consensus, but we want to see if anyone from the public has anything before we do that.
Sure. I would, let me just make one comment for my own behalf about site meetings, and that is that I found them especially valuable for getting input, feedback from neighbors and from other people in the community. That's difficult to arrange in a one-on-one visit. But also, I think there are some members of the community, and often just specific to a particular application, that want to do the preparation of actually being on the property, seeing what the visual impact of a project is going to be. And it's hard to get that experience in a regular staff or applicant presentation. And it's a little harder to arrange in individual visits. So that's something that I found really valuable about the group or full ASCC field meetings that I look forward to returning to. But I recognize also that there are going to be more scheduling challenges if we were to retain a earlier or mid-afternoon regular meeting. Fitting in field meetings on the same day might be a little difficult. And so there might need to be a different approach to that too. Maybe they would be held on a different day, as long as the package or the applicant and staff were ready for such a meeting. But anyway, my schedule is quite flexible, so I can accommodate pretty much what anybody else needs to see happen. Let's go ahead and see if there are comments from members of the public. So I'll open the public hearing, and Laura, if there's somebody with their hand up, please log them in.
There is Laura Rels.
All right, welcome. You're on the air.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes, just fine,
Okay.
Laura.
Yeah, sorry, I'm in the playground with children. So I'm Kenny's wife. Yeah, I just wanted to confirm that the 5:45 to the 6:30 is just incredibly difficult. It takes like 5 hours out of our joint working week to do that. And when Kenny signed up to ASCC, we didn't anticipate that. So I think he's being clear in terms of, if we can slot it so you do the 2-hour meetings before 5:45, that works, or in the evening. guess I also foresee that site visits could be a bit problematic. I think so he takes the kids to work, and daycare is at work. So if you're doing site visits in the week, then, hey, don't do that to your brother. It's gonna take whatever time it takes him to drive back from Mountain View to do a site visit, and then drive back there. So, it would be, and then there are like repercussions because he'd need to be working out hours in the evening to catch up with other work. So I guess from our perspective, if there are options to do site visits unsynchronizedly at different points, like at the weekends, that's going to be less time cost on our family than trying to do it like during the week, say between 9 and 6 p.m. And I also don't know the extent to which you could do some of these like during the evenings, at least during the summer hours, or the frequency at which you're expecting those to happen. But I did want to voice that that would be quite a considerable time cost on us and would be difficult.
Great. Well, thanks for checking in and backfilling Kenny's comments. Much appreciated. Laura Russell, is there anybody else with their hand up?
There's no one else with their hand up.
All right. This isn't an action item, but it is a free form discussion. So if anybody would like to say anything, I think we have Mary Ann listening in. We've got Ann here. Any other thoughts about how the ASCC meets, when it meets, how it meets?
I have something to consider. So when we do have a site visit followed by our regular meetings, this is the opportunity for the homeowner to get their whole team, right, into Portola Valley, which not necessarily, there are many architects, landscapers, blah, 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 living here. So if we were to distribute the site meeting and the town hall meeting on different days, I think that's not favorable for getting everyone there we want. So I'm just thinking of how, I mean, I'm fine with, we go back to our site meetings being at, if we have several, they were at like 3 and 4, and then our evening meeting is at 7. I'm fine with that. We all got really comfortable with Zoom because you could just be at home and you could still get things done. And as you see, I turn off my camera when my girls want something from me, but I think that our site meetings are so valuable, and all of us together it's so valuable, and the neighbors so valuable. Walking the sites, going to the neighbors' properties, that makes a huge difference, because looking at plans, it might seem one way to you, but when you actually step foot on the ground there, it is different. And I want us to keep up that level of understanding and individuality with each project, because that is what makes us this great community where all voices are heard, everything is taken into account by knowing the exact property.
Right.
Can
Well,
I ask a clarifying question from Kenny?
Yes.
So that's the no-go window. So does that mean you could attend a meeting at 6:30 or you could attend a meeting at 7? I'm just wondering if we could push it down to 6:30 and make it a little bit earlier.
I think I could attend a meeting at 6:30 reasonably, yes.
Because that might be a reasonable place to go. I mean, I think ASCC at 7, there was, for those of us that did site meetings and then ASCC, we all would run and get a little snack. At least that's what we would do in the office. And I'm guessing that's what you would do, go home and get a snack and then go to the evening meeting. I would say that for staff's point of view, it's significantly better to meet at 6:30 than 7. In terms of our schedules and the number of night meetings we're staffing with the housing element and everything else that we're doing. that really makes a difference for us. So if people are willing to do 6:30, so we do afternoon site meetings. I want to be specific with my language. Afternoon site meetings and 6:30 regular meeting when we're back in the schoolhouse. I think that would be a very reasonable way to go for a while. We could test that out and then see if we want to make that permanent. And if we need to make it permanent, we could see if we need the council approval for that.
That sounds great. Yeah, I think that's a good proposal.
Are we ruling out the 4 o'clock meetings totally then?
Except for except for field meetings, it sounds like.
I think so. Well, I think that's what I'm hearing, because we can't be done in time for Kenny to meet his family obligations all the time. Sometimes we'd be done and sometimes we wouldn't be.
Yeah.
Right. As I said before, for me, I'm pretty flexible. 6:30 works as well as 7, which works as well as 4. There's rare occasions when I can't schedule around that. But we all have those occasions when we can't make a meeting. I'll also say that in my experience, when we were doing field meetings, attendance wasn't quite as good there of commission members as it was for the evening meeting, because occasionally you get somebody who does have real work commitments or other commitments that are schedule constrained, and it just doesn't work. Kenny, in your particular case, with your diligence about visiting a site, even if you're not able to do it in a group, I think that would help alleviate some of the downside of not being able to attend a group field meeting. The only concern that we might have there would be the occasional lack of a quorum. If there were a couple of other people that couldn't make a meeting in the field on a particular day and you also weren't available, then we'd have to cancel that meeting. But I think even if we had field meetings that you were occasionally, even maybe more than occasionally, not able to attend because of work or family commitments, that would not be unprecedented in the ASCC. I mean, there have been times when commissioners have had a number of conflicts that have kept them from participating in, say, more than half of the field meetings. And, I think we need to be a little flexible about that. Not everybody's, where Al and I are, which is kind of mostly retired and with a very flexible schedule.
Looking forward to being there at some point.
Someday, yeah, 20 years or so, when they're off at college or launched or something like that.
And really, from staff's point of view, we always want to make sure that it's as pleasant as possible to volunteer for the town. So sometimes it's really hard to do your jobs, and we recognize that. So we want to put back the parts of your jobs that are very pleasant. And I think the site meetings where you walk together and look together are a good part of your jobs, is my observation, that's very valuable to you. And so we want to be flexible around the scheduling for individual commissioners, right? So we don't make it so burdensome on people and maintain that really good, ethos of volunteerism. So I think this is a really good discussion. So I think it should be agendized and a motion. So what I would propose is that we just, on the upcoming meeting, we'll have a more detailed timeline for you for going back to hybrid meetings. It seems like we've developed some consensus around this, but give everybody a chance to think about it. And I think we should come back and have an actual vote so that we've got something to go forward on. Does that sound good?
That sounds like a good plan.
Okay, great.
And speaking of upcoming meetings and the ebb and flow of applications and processing, do we have some meetings coming up that we can plan on spending several hours at, or are they pretty well paced out?
The things that we've got coming up are very routine. So, you know, we've got just a number of regular single family projects coming up. So we've just completed a couple of really big things. And it'll be a little while still before, you know, before Stanford comes before the commission and before a couple other bigger things are coming forward. So a lot of the staff's resources at my level have been devoted to the housing element and the safety element. But staff is just doing their regular thing, working with single family applicants. And so we'll have some of those coming forward. We just took in several applications, so we might have a little bit of a lull here for a month or two, and then we might get busy again as those are all ready for ASCC review.
Okay, good to know. Thank you. All right, unless there are other members of the public who have checked in that would like to comment. And Laura, does anybody have their hand up? I'd be happy to open public comment one more time for this. No?
No
All
hands
right.
are up.
Then I'll close this agenda item and we'll move on to our final agenda item, which is approval of the minutes of the meeting of February 14th, 1 month ago. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes in the packet?
Yep.
Yeah.
Any questions or corrections?
None for me.
It looked good to me.
Fine for me.
Yep. The usual excellent job. Before we take a vote, I'll open this item for public comment. We occasionally have had members of the public who want to comment on the minutes, and so I'll offer that opportunity now. Laura, any hands up?
No hands are up.
All right. Let's go ahead and if someone would like to make a motion for the minutes, please do so now.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as recorded in our agenda.
Thank you, Jane. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Al. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. That passes 5-0. Thank you all very much. This has been a good meeting. I think we got Kenny out in time. We can't always count on doing that though, and I understand.
Yeah.
So
Sometimes we've had 3-hour meetings, 4-hour meetings.
Oh yeah.
my very first meeting was a 5-hour meeting. I'll never forget it. And neither will Nancy.
But the housing element committee last week beat them all.
Yeah, we had a 6.5-hour meeting.
Oh boy.
6.5 hours.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
I'm
we had
impressed.
about 165 members of the public came.
Right.
Wow.
I listened. I didn't do anything. I just listened.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
it's really amazing participation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
All right. Well, it's good to see you all. It'll be even better to see you in person.
Yeah.
Looking forward to that. So until next time, take care.
Okay,
Thanks,
good.
everyone.
Thanks.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye.